Movies like Treasure Island and Pirates of the Caribbean have helped to perpetuate all sorts of myths about piracy. You probably picture pirates as a group of jolly old men with powerful accents, walking around with wooden legs, a patch on their eye and a parrot on their shoulder, sitting together and drinking copious amounts of rum whilst they pore over maps of buried treasure. But unlike the swashbuckling stories that Hollywood movies have spread, pirate life was actually harsh and rife with danger, hardship, and violence, which usually led to premature death. Let's travel back in time and sort out the fact from the fiction, from flags to peg legs and planks to patches. Welcome to Walk the Plank. They buried their treasure. Sadly, it's thought that this is mostly a myth, although we can't really be sure. Let's face it, if a pirate had successfully and secretly buried their treasure somewhere where nobody could find it, and nobody has ever found it, then how do we know that they ever even buried it? Most pirates will have wanted their share of any loot right away so that they could spend it immediately. A pirate's life was hard, and knowing that you might die the next day is a great incentive for living life to the full and partying whenever you got the chance. Despite the romantic idea of gold and silver chalices and plates oversized jewels such as diamonds, rubies and emeralds, the majority of the booty appropriated by pirates would have been bog standard, boring trading goods such as timber, food, cloth and animal skins. Burying these would have not been a good idea. Imagine the state of them after spending just a few days underground. Large merchant ships carrying spices, silks, rum, sugar and medicine were always highly prized. It's likely that gold and silver would not have been carried on a pirate ship because it would have weighed down the vessel too much. Governors in the colonies would often turn a blind eye to the pilfering of merchant vessels because of British trading restrictions. Many pirates picked up diseases on their travels and medicines were particularly sought after. Syphilis was rife among pirate crews and mercury was incorrectly thought to be a cure-all for it. In 1718, in what became known as the Blockade of Charleston, the infamous Blackbeard took several ships full of people hostage, including the governor's son. Surprisingly, he demanded a medicine chest as ransom. The medical supplies included mercury, which was probably for his syphilis-suffering crew. Although he could have been experiencing the disease himself, which is just an occupational hazard when you have 14 wives. In 1996, the wreckage of Blackbeard's ship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was found off the coast of North Carolina. Among the 250,000 artifacts found was a urethral syringe for the injection of mercury. Although the legendary buccaneer captain William Kidd did hide a small hoard of goodies on Gardiner's Island, New York, he appeared to be the only pirate to have ever buried his treasure. But he also claimed that he buried booty such as gold, spices and silk stolen from the ship the Quedagh Merchant, but over several generations many eager treasure hunters have never been able to find it. Although expectations to the not carrying heavy metals on board rule have been found. The wider galley was captured by Captain Samuel Black Sam Bellamy, but in 1717 off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it was carrying booty taken from more than 50 looted ships. When the former slave ship was discovered at the bottom of the sea over 260 years later, she'd been carrying over 4 tons of silver and gold. So there is nothing in any of the available records that suggests that it was common pirate practice to bury treasure, and unfortunately, X does not mark the spot. They forced their enemies to walk the plank. Not really. Why bother when there were other easier ways of disposing of someone? Walking the plank is supposed to be one of the most popular methods of torture or murder that a pirate regularly used. The enemy was forced to stand at the end of a wooden plank whilst it was suspended out over the water attached to the side of the pirate ship. The victim might be questioned on the threat of being made to walk off the end of the plank into the sea below to either drown or become fish food for the sharks. But why go through all of the drama of making them walk off the plank? Wouldn't it be easier just to throw them overboard? There were many punishments available to pirates. One of the easiest ways to dispose of an enemy was to maroon them on a deserted island and leave them to die. If they were lucky, they would be given a day's worth of water and a pistol containing a single shot so the poor soul could end their own life quickly. They said "Arrrrr" a lot. No ho ho, they didn't. In the 1950s, one film in particular was responsible for the accent and popular phrases associated with pirates. Treasure Island was based on the novel by Robert Louis Stevenson and starred actor Robert Newton. He played the fictional pirate Long John Silver, who served under the notorious Captain Flint and gave us many of the popular phrases now associated with piracy. Newton used an extremely exaggerated version of his own English West Country accent. He also used sayings picked up from the fishing communities back home in Cornwall in the southwest of England. The result was the stereotypical pirate voice that we know today. Newton has even become the patron saint of International Talk Like a Pirate Day, which is held every year. Pirates would have spoken just like any other sailors, and their accents would have obviously been dependent on where they were originally from, whether that be Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, or the colonies of America. They were sailors, so it stands to reason that their accents and language would certainly have been colourful, but nothing like what we associate a pirate to sound like today. So probably and sadly no mateys, hearties, or the shivering of any timbers. They flew the Jolly Roger flag. This one is actually very real, and the flying of the Jolly Roger flag was used as an intimidation tactic to strike fear into other sailors. Those sneaky pirates would fly the national flag of the ship that they were pursuing, then on approach, and when they were too close for the targeted vessel to escape, the pirates would quickly throw up the Jolly Roger, in the hope that the sailors would be so intimidated and afraid that they would surrender without the need for fighting. The flag was usually black with the image of a white skull and crossbones, and came into common usage in the 1720s, although it was used a decade earlier by several badass captains including Edward England, John Taylor, and Black Sam Bellamy. They wore gold earrings. And this one is actually true too, but the wearing of gold hoops wasn't just to make a trendy statement, it was fashion with a function. Earrings were given to young sailors to celebrate the first time that they crossed the equator, or when they first sailed around Cape Horn, as the area around the southernmost tip of South America was known for being particularly treacherous. Sailors are a superstitious lot, and earrings were also worn for this reason. Some thought that the precious metal of an earring possessed magical powers and could cure bad eyesight, or that having the ears pierced could prevent seasickness when pressure was applied to the earlobe. Some even believed that a gold earring would protect a man from drowning. None of this was true, but a gold or silver earring did have a practical function. Being made from precious metal, the earring acted as a form of insurance, as selling it would provide enough money for a decent burial if a pirate's body was ever washed ashore. If he died aboard the ship, it would help to cover any costs that occurred from shipping his body home so that he wouldn't have to be buried on foreign soil or at sea. Some pirates even engraved the name of their home port on the inside of their earrings. And for those pirates responsible for firing the cannons on board the ship, the earrings could serve as somewhere to dangle wads of wax that would be used as earplugs. They all wore eye patches. And as for those iconic eye patches, it could easily be true that many were worn due to a pirate losing one eye whilst fighting. But the wearing of them was quite widespread, especially during the golden age of piracy, so there is likely to be another reason. Wearing an eye patch can greatly enhance night vision. This would have been particularly useful when moving between decks. Eyes can adapt quite quickly when going from a dark area such as that below deck into the light, but it can in fact take up to 25 minutes for them to adjust when leaving an area of bright light and going into darkness. By wearing a patch on one eye in the light and then swapping it over to the other eye in the dark adapted eye would already be accustomed to the gloom, and the wearer would have immediate night vision. Although there is no definitive proof from historical sources that this was the case, it is plausible. The Federal Aviation Administration of America recommends that, quote, "A pilot should close one eye when using a light to preserve some degree of night vision, because even though a bright light may shine in one eye, the other will retain its dark adaptation." Quite a clever little pirate trick to be able to fight when boarding a vessel and then quickly switch the patch to the outdoor eye and immediately see in the dark to plunder any treasure below deck. Peglegs and Parrots. Did pirate captains really walk around with talking parrots on their shoulders? It's possible, and parrots would probably make great companions for life on a ship. But the likelihood is that if they were brought on board, it was because they had been purchased in Caribbean ports to be brought back and resold on the markets at home. A colourful talking parrot would bring a really good price in Europe, where they were considered to be an exotic animal. So what about peglegs then? The artificial limbs carved from wood that we see in so many pirate movies. Were they really a thing? Well, pirates fought in many battles, and because of the high risk of injury and a lack of good quality medicine, it is a possibility. But once again, there are no eyewitness accounts to suggest this. Just like the trope of buried treasure, the use of parrots, patches, and peglegs all come from the book Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, and the many movies that it has spawned. Thank you for watching this episode of Walk the Plank, and I'll see you next week for another one. Cheers!